Hello, history nerds and historians. My name is Krystina, and this is Effed Up Mythology. We have a lot to talk about today. It is part 4 of the Troy series. If you haven't listened to part 1 through 3, go back and do it. Now, I'm not recapping. I've been working on this for like over a month, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. Trigger warning, death. Lots of death. This is war we are talking about. And then I'm trying to figure out like what the trigger warning of this part would be, because it made me uncomfortable. So I understand that like it'd probably make other people uncomfortable as well. There is an instance in this of like somebody having sex with another person and then drugging them after. I don't know how that works. I don't know necessarily what trigger warning to give to that. But yeah, so trigger warning for whatever that is. Without further ado, as I seriously rethink my impulsive life decisions of spending an entire month talking about the Iliad to condense it into like 2 hours worth of content, sit back, relax, and practice your oh good god, what the fuck faces. So picking up right where we left off, the next morning Zeus calls in all of the gods and goddesses and is like, I am fucking tired of this. It's been years and I'm ready for it to be done. Same, Zeus. We actually agree on something. What is happening? So he continues, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do, and you are going to agree that you are not going to step in and help the Trojans or the Greeks, and anyone who dies, I will blast with my fucking lightning spear and then hurl you into underworld, where you'll suffer for all of eternity, and not just the underworld, but the deepest level, so deep that where Hades is will seem as far away from you as the sky is from the ground, because some of you seem to have forgotten that I am in fucking charge, and I would love for one of you to fucking try me right now. And Athena's like, we all know how powerful you are, but some of us feel really bad for the Greeks, and they don't want to watch them all die because of something that they had no control over. So like, yeah, I'll stay out of the fighting if you want me to, but I'm not going to stop going down there and giving them advice to keep them alive. And Zeus is like, oh, baby, don't worry. I didn't mean that. You can do whatever you want. Okay, Zeus, you're so scary. I'm so intimidated. Like I was there for a second. But not anymore. So the Greeks and the Trojans start fighting again, and Zeus is watching from Mount Ida, separate from the other Greek deities. So he takes out a scale, and on it he puts 2 portions of death. And one is for the Greeks and one is for the Trojans. And the Greek side is heavier. So he starts hurling down lightning bolts into the Greeks, which makes them start to retreat. Except for fucking Diomedes, because of course it's Diomedes. So he notices that Nestor is on a chariot and that one of his horses has been killed, and he's struggling to try and cut it so he can flee. And while he's distracted with that, Hector is just coming right towards him. So Diomedes is like, Nestor, you're old. Your horses are old. Let's get on this chariot that's pulled by those super cool horses that I stole from Aeneas, and we'll ride straight into the Trojans, and Hector can fucking see how fierce we are. Let us ignore the fact that Zeus just threw a fucking lightning bolt into our midst, and we're completely alone on the battlefield now because everyone else has fled. So Diomedes and Nestor do just that. They ride into the Trojan forces, and Diomedes throws a spear at Hector in his chariot, and he misses, and is about to throw another when Zeus notices and fires yet another bolt of lightning in front of Diomedes. And Nestor's like, yeah, we need to turn back. Clearly Zeus has decided that Hector is going to win today. And Diomedes is like, you are probably right, but one day Hector is going to be telling the story of today, and he's going to boast about how when I saw him, I ran away, and I can't have that. And Nestor's like, shut the fuck up. We're leaving. And then they start fleeing. Hector calls after them and is like, I thought Diomedes was strong and brave, but clearly he's just a coward. And then he turns to his troops and is like, let's go get them. If we're able to capture Diomedes and Nestor, then maybe we can make the Greeks leave tonight. And Hera hears this and is pissed and turns to Poseidon and was like, Are you really just going to allow this to happen? And he was like, yeah. So she goes down and influences Agamemnon to give this grand speech. And by grand speech, I mean insulting and emasculating the soldiers and feeding into toxic masculinity that no man deserves. Like, I talk a lot of shit and like jokingly crap on men all the time in this podcast, but I really like and support a lot of men who aren't shit. Like 99% of men are not shit, but like regardless, even that 1% that are shit do not deserve to be treated the way that Agamemnon treats his soldiers. His soldiers. And while he's insulting all of his men, he's crying hysterically. You know what? It is completely fine for a man to be in touch with his emotions, just not fine for him to be a dick. So Zeus sees this, and he pities Agamemnon, and is like, I know that I just shot a lightning bolt down at the entirety of the Greek forces and made them flee and lose the battle, but I'll send an eagle down now. And in the eagle's talon is a fawn, and it's going to drop the fawn at my altar. And then that way the Greeks will know that I actually want them to win. And the Greeks see this, and they run back out against the Trojans to fight again with Diomedes at the front. But Zeus wasn't just going to let them win. No. I mean, like, eventually. Like, the fawn thing means, like, eventually they're going to win. But, like, not today. Like, today, there's no intentions of letting the Greeks win. So this time, Hera turns to Athena and is like, are you going to do anything to help the Greeks? And Athena's like, no. So back in battle, the Trojans have decided that they're going to intimidate the Greeks by lighting a bunch of fires so the Greeks can attack in the night, and also an added bonus of making them think that the Trojans are planning on burning all their ships down. So on the Greek side, Agamemnon has gathered all the men, and he's basically like, I have been betrayed by Zeus. He once told me that I would win the battle against Troy and bring home shitloads of riches, and I see that I was tricked and that we shouldn't trust the gods. So pack up, friends. Too many people have died, and I don't see this ending anytime soon, and I think it's just time for us to go home. And everyone just stands there speechless for a while. And then Diomedes stands up because of course it's fucking Diomedes. And he's like, you can go wherever the fuck you want, but I'm staying right here. And honestly, I just can't wait for someone to kill Diomedes. And for some reason, I had it in my head that like Hector and him fight and like Hector kills him, but he doesn't. In fact, no one kills Diomedes in the Trojan War, which means I have to put up with him for another like 400 fucking pages. Sorry for the spoiler, I guess, but if I have to suffer, then so do you. I'm becoming completely unhinged. So Nestor stands up and says, most glorious son of Atreus, Agamemnon, with you my speech will begin, and with you it will end, since you are king over many, and Zeus has bestowed the scepter on you and the long-established traditions, so that the people may profit from your sound judgment. You, more than anyone here, must not only speak well, but listen well and act when another man's heart prompts him to give advice for the good of us all. The words may be his, but the credit will go to you. Now I will speak out and tell you what I think is best. No one will put forth a better idea than this one, which I have long had in mind. And like, can he just fucking come out with it already? Zeus, the thunderer, supreme god and ruler of Olympus, I fucking swear, like, I know that it is super old and classic, and like my undergrad was literary studies, which is a very fancy way to say English major, and I specialized in Shakespeare, who is notoriously convoluted and is known for dancing around the point. I literally wrote a 20-page paper on the supernatural in Hamlet and Macbeth and spent an entire semester just analyzing every single line of those two plays, and I'm still pulling my fucking hair out reading the fucking Iliad in this point. Anyway, after all of that long speech where Nestor says fucking nothing, he literally just tells Agamemnon to try and make amends with Achilles. Fucking duh. And Agamemnon is also like, fucking duh. Okay, I will give him back Briseis and 7 more girls, because women can be given as gifts, along with my oath that I did not rape Briseis. Although the translation says that he did not make love to her, which, like, We all know there would be nothing consensual about that. So way to minimize what's actually going on in the Greek camps. What a guy. He's also going to give him gold and weapons and cauldrons and horses. And if they win against Priam, he can have whatever he wants. Plus 20 Trojan women, and I'll even let him marry one of my daughters. In fact, I will pay him a handsome dowry, more than any man could dream of, to marry one of my daughters. And it is not the point of this right now, but that is 29 women that Agamemnon is offering to just like give Achilles. Like, what the fuck is he going to do with 29 women? Agamemnon also said that he would give Achilles 7 cities. So I guess like Achilles will take his 7 cities and he'll put one woman in the north and one in the south and one in the east and one in the west of his 7 cities, and then like still have one to spare in case anything happens to one of them. So they go to bargain with Achilles, and he's just like fucking lounging, singing, and playing on the lyre with Patroclus, while all of the other Greeks are dropping dead left and right on the battlefield. And he's like, "Sup, guys? Odysseus, good to see you, man. You always my favorite. Here's some wine and here's some food. What's going on?" Oh, Agamemnon's gonna give me all that. Let me think. No, actually, I think I'm just going to get on my boat and leave. And you can tell Agamemnon exactly that, because he doesn't have the balls to come and say it to my face. And since those who are beneath him, or at least what he considers beneath him, to do his dirty work, he could offer me 20 times what he has, and the answer would still be no. So that is 580 women. Sorry, I'm fixating on that. Like, Achilles also, during this speech to Odysseus and the other men that come to him, call Briseis his darling wife, which again, I mean, she was taken as prisoner and given as a prize, so like minimizing this for what it actually is. So the next morning, Zeus still has it out for the Greeks, and he sends strife into the Greek camp. In this case, it is the goddess Eris, who I fucking love her. If you forgot, she's the one who started this whole thing because she wasn't invited to a party. She just comes and like stands in the middle of everyone and screams, which like, I've been there, girl. Sometimes a feral scream is like the only answer to make you feel better. She makes all of men want to fight and not go home, and Eris just looks on with joy because she is a mood. Agamemnon kills a lot of people. Most of them aren't important. Honestly, the only one that's mentioned previously that might be somewhat important is Antiphus, and he's just mentioned because he's one of Priam's sons. So Zeus intercedes, and he has Iris relay this message to Hector to stay away from Agamemnon until he is injured. Once a spear or arrow hits Agamemnon, Hector will be free to attack. So it's super nice that Zeus is allowing them to take turns, you know? So after many people tried and failed to kill Agamemnon, there was finally one man named Kuun, who stabs him below the elbow on his forearm. And apparently, the pain from this stab was worse than a woman feels when she is in labor. Sure. Super believable that a knife wound to your arm. Poor guy. Also, this story was written by a man. So, but Agamemnon was hurt. So now it is time for Hector to fight. And Hector gets immediately knocked unconscious when Diomedes throws a spear at him and it crashes into his helmet. So while Hector is laying there, having a little nap, Paris finally makes himself useful and fucking does something, and in a way that is not at all foreshadowing, Paris fires an arrow at Diomedes, and it goes through the instep of his foot and lodges him into the ground. But his injury didn't stop Diomedes from shit-talking Paris. He calls him a weakling and a girl-crazed seducer and a perfumed sissy, and challenges him to hand-to-hand combat instead of hiding behind his cowardly arrows. Then he's like, "I know you literally shot me through my foot, but this doesn't even hurt. It would hurt more if a child hit me. When I hit someone, they just fucking die." And then he like pulls the arrow out of his foot and he flees back to the Greek camps because he was actually in too much agony. But like, do I actually like Diomedes? I haven't decided. So Diomedes is now injured. Agamemnon is injured. Odysseus gets surrounded by Trojans and is also injured. And Hector comes to and charges at Ajax the Great, who retreats. And Achilles is watching the entire thing from his ship and turned to his dear companion Patroclus and said, "Patroclus, joy of my heart, now the Greeks will have to ask me to fight for them. But it looks like they carried someone off the field, and it looks like it might be the healer Machaon. Go check and see for me." So he does, but I feel really bad for Patroclus because even with them being so close, Patroclus is terrified of Achilles and his rage. He's like, hey, guys, I'm here. I have a couple questions to ask, but I can't sit down and talk for long because Achilles might get upset if I linger, and you know how terrifying he can be. And Nestor is like, why is he concerned now? When did he start giving a fuck? Yeah, Machaon is injured. He was shot with an arrow. So was Diomedes. And Odysseus and Agamemnon were fucking stabbed. Is he just going to wait until we're all dead and all of the ships are on fire? And then he goes on this long anecdote about a battle that happened when he was young, not respecting at all what Patroclus said about the whole, like, can't be here for too long thing. Moral of the story of this big long rant that Nestor goes on is that he fought for others even when he didn't want to and received glory, whereas Achilles only fights for himself and he'll come to regret it when everyone that he cares about has died. Then he tells Patroclus that while Achilles is stronger and braver, Patroclus is older, so Achilles might respect him and listen to what he has to say. The Greeks have lost hope. They're dying. There seems to be no hope of ever returning home, or at this point, even seeing the sun tomorrow. The Trojans are getting too cocky without him on the field. We need Achilles, and if Achilles doesn't want to fight, then we can respect that. But maybe we can make the men think that he's on the field. If he were to, say, give someone his armor, someone that he loved and respected, that knew him well, and could lead his men and perhaps walk like him, perhaps fight like him. If he were to give you his armor, Patroclus, you could be the hero of the war. And as Patroclus is making his way back to Achilles' ship after having this conversation, the Trojans make their way closer and closer to the Greek camps and attempt to break down the wall that they built. And after some fighting, Hector throws a boulder and shatters the gate. The Greeks all flee back to their ships as the Trojans make their way into the Greek camp, and they're heading straight for the ships. The Greeks have now completely lost hope, and Poseidon comes down and he fills them with strength and courage, but it's not enough. And while he's doing this, Zeus is not paying attention, and Hera is watching and is super annoyed that Zeus is just looking the other way and letting everyone fight and not seeing that Poseidon has stepped in, and that's when she gets an idea. So Zeus is known for his just constant erections and how he's constantly in the mood. So she decides that she's going to seduce him. She's going to make herself so unbelievably alluring that he would become overwhelmed with desire, and then she'll drug him. I just can't, man. Like, even the female characters are garbage. So she went to her room and bathed herself in ambrosia and then rubbed perfume all over herself and combed and braided her hair until it glistened. And then she put on a dress that Athena made for her. She put on earrings and sexy fuck me heels. And then she found Aphrodite and asked Aphrodite if she could give her love and desire. Hera lied and said that she was going to see Oceanus and his wife/sister Tethys, and that she's going to give them some of this love and desire because they've been fighting and just need to have makeup sex already. And Aphrodite was like, of course, here, take my shawl that has the tassels of love and desire and flirtations and whispered endearments and seduction that literally holds all of my magic. And then Hera went to the god of sleep and tells him that he needs to make Zeus pass the fuck out after they're done having sex. And then if he does that for her, she'll have her son Hephaestus make him a golden throne. And Sleep is like, no, you made me do that before when Heracles was performing his 12 labors and Zeus nearly fucking killed me. There's literally nothing you can say that would make me do this. And Hera is like, I will give you one of the graces to marry. And Sleep is like, sold. Specifically, I want Pasithea. And Hera's like, I don't give a shit, whatever you want, dude. So Hera and Sleep make their way to Mount Ida, where Zeus is residing, so that he can just like fucking get away from all of the other Olympians. And Sleep sort of like makes himself invisible, so Zeus just sees her and is like, ugh, what the fuck are you doing? What are you wearing? Whatever it is that you're wearing, it will look better on the floor. And then he attempts to seduce her back by saying, quote, let us go to bed and be joined in pleasure. Never before has desire for goddess or woman so inundated my heart and so overpowered it. This is good, super nice and complimentary. And then he continues, quote, not even when I was in love with Ixion's wife who bore me Perithous, or with Acrisius' daughter Danae, that girl with the lovely ankles who bore me Perseus, or with the daughter of Phoenix, Europa, who bore me Minos and Rhadamanthus, or with Semele or Alcmena and Thebes, who was the mother of Heracles, whereas the other gave birth to Dionysus, the joy of mankind, or with Demeter, or Leto, or even yourself, then now, when this sweet desire has overwhelmed me. So take some advice from Zeus. When you are trying to seduce your spouse or your partner, mention all the many people that you've cheated on them with, and make them extra horny by also mentioning the children that you had with them and mostly abandoned until they became adults and heroes, and then you can take credit that these are all your children, like you had something to do with it and their upbringing. So Hera plays along with it, and she's like, what? Here? Someone might see us. Don't pay attention to sleep pretending to be invisible in the corner. If you want to have sex, let's go back to Mount Olympus and do it in privacy. And Zeus is like, Hera, baby, we can do it here. I'll cover us with a golden cloud that not even Helios the sun could see through. And as he took her into his arms, spring flowers erupted from the earth, lifting them off the ground, and Zeus surrounded them in a golden cloud. And once they finished, Sleep carried out his promise and put Zeus into a deep sleep, and then ran down to the battlefield and told Poseidon to take this opportunity to help the Greeks as much as possible. So Poseidon leads the Greeks into battle and imbues them with so much power that Ajax the Greater is able to wound Hector so badly that he has to be carried off the field. And without Hector there to lead them, the Trojans are just decimated. After a while, Zeus wakes up and sees what happened while he was essentially drugged. And Hera tries to say that it was all Poseidon's fault. And I had nothing to do with it. And Zeus is like, dude, I literally don't care. I honestly have no personal investment in this. The only reason why I'm doing anything for the Trojans is because I promised Thetis. And Achilles is going to be coming back to the battle really soon. Hector will die, Troy will fall, the Greeks will win. But until then, I need you and anyone else who is trying to intervene to help the Greeks to back off. So Poseidon leaves the field and Hector advances and gets far enough into the Greek camp to touch a ship. So Patroclus is watching all this happen and he's crying hysterically as the first ship bursts into flames. Now he understands why Achilles is being so stubborn about this feud with Agamemnon, but how many more Greeks will have to die for his stubbornness? He tells Achilles that he is impossible to deal with, that he can't be son of Peleus and Thetis because he has no heart and he has no pity. His parents must have been the pitiless ocean and the harsh cliffs. But I will not ask you to put your pride aside. I know that it is important to you, but you can allow me to put on your armor. And I'll take our men onto the field. The Trojans will think that I'm you, and I'll drive them back to the gates of Troy. Achilles agrees. He's like, I can't be mad forever, but I'm not ready to go back. So I agree to your plan because if the Trojans make it to the ships and burn them, then we'll never be able to go home. But just get them away from our ships. Even if Zeus puts the biggest triumph in front of you, do not push farther than that. Not only do I not want you to take my glory, but if you're successful enough, a god might descend onto the field and enter battle against you. Aphrodite loves Troy. Apollo loves Troy. So go and drive them away from the ships and then come back to me immediately. You mean more to me than anyone else. And I would see every single Trojan and every single Greek dead if it means that you and I are the only ones to survive. Achilles goes and gathers his 2,500 men that have been just chilling on the beach. And Patroclus puts on his armor and leads them onto the field. Achilles prays to Zeus to have his comrade Patroclus, who is more dear to him than anyone and anything else in the world, return to him, and for the ships not to be burned in the process so that they can return home together. And as Achilles watches them run off to battle, Zeus hears his prayer, but only will grant him half. Nestor's and Patroclus' plan works. The Trojans see Patroclus and are immediately taken with fear, thinking that it's Achilles, and they start retreating when Patroclus throws spear after spear into the midst, killing many Trojans. They put out the fire that was burning through the ship, and the Trojans retreat, thinking again that this is Achilles. And he's done what he promised he would do, has driven the Trojans back. He put out the fire, he stopped more ships from being burned, and now it should be time for him to turn back. But the sight of the retreating Trojans gave him courage and bravado, and he was full of anger, and he wanted revenge, and he drove on. Zeus has apparently decided to finally start supporting the Greeks, and he sends a terrible storm into the Trojan camp, which makes them run even faster. And still Patroclus is pushing on, slaughtering Trojan, getting revenge for all the fallen Greeks. But then he makes a mistake. He kills the wrong man. So a Trojan named Sarpedon, who was son of Zeus, saw everything that was happening and decided that he would face this man head on. And he leaps down from his chariot in full armor. Patroclus sees him and does the same. And as they're fighting, Zeus is watching from Mount Ida, and he turns to Hera and he's like, my son is about to die and I can't bear to watch. Should I go down there and snatch him from battle like how Aphrodite snatched Paris and Aeneas? And Hera was like, I mean, you do what you want. But you said you didn't want us interfering, and you're going to go intervene. You can go for it if you want, but just know that other gods and goddesses will do the same for their children or people that they hold dear if you do so. And so Zeus watches as Patroclus drives a spear into Sarpedon's heart, and he swears his revenge. Now, the events that follow are essentially everybody fighting over Sarpedon's body. The Trojans were trying to get it back so they can give it the proper burial rites. The Greeks are trying to strip him of his armor to dishonor him and basically like desecrate his corpse out of revenge. Some of the Greeks try to shit talk the Trojans, but Patroclus turns and tells them that this is not the time or the place. We should use actions and not our words. And when we talk shit, it distracts us and takes away from the attack. And then Zeus puts fear into Hector's heart and makes him retreat back to the gates of Troy. And Patroclus should also retreat. He should listen to what people are saying. He should keep his word to Achilles that he would save the ships and renew the strength of the Greeks, but instead tells his men to take Sarpedon's armor, and he follows Hector. And he makes it to the gates of Troy. And it is in his grasp to win, to breach the gates and take the city, to end the war with a single strike. But Apollo, who supports the Trojans, prevents him. 3 times Patroclus attempts to climb the walls, and 3 times Apollo throws him down, and Patroclus is getting pissed, and he attacks the gates with the frenzy, and Apollo shouts down to him that he needs to go back, that it isn't fated for Troy to fall to him, and he steps back to avoid Apollo's wrath, but the wrath is already there. Apollo disguises himself as Hector's uncle and then calls Hector a coward and asks him why he stopped fighting. And he tells him to drive the chariot straight at this man who looks like Achilles and walks like Achilles and fights like Achilles. This man who, as far as anyone is concerned, is Achilles. So Hector gets into his chariot. He hands his reins to his half-brother Cebriones so that he can focus on his spear. Patroclus jumps down as well, a spear in his left hand, and in his right hand he picks up a boulder. And with all of his strength he throws it at Hector, but it doesn't hit Hector. It hits his brother, killing him instantly. And then he doesn't take his own advice from earlier, and he starts shit-talking Hector. He's like, wow, what a fucking acrobat you are. No, not an acrobat. You must be an oyster fisher. You must be the best oyster fisher. You must be able to feed all of the cities surrounding Troy with how good of a diver you are. Here, let me throw more shit at you so I can see how well you dive out of the way of those. Or, how about I fucking race you? And Patroclus books it for Cebriones to steal his armor and do whatever else, just as Hector runs towards his brother as well. And they're literally like fighting over this body. Hector grabs his head, Patroclus grabs his foot, and they're playing corpse tug of war. And the Greeks end up being stronger. They drag his body away. But again, Patroclus, who should have turned back a long time ago, charges at the Trojans with murder in his heart. He charges at them 3 times, and each time he kills 9 men. And then Apollo steps in. Patroclus didn't see him coming. Apollo had covered himself with a mist, and as Patroclus went to attack for the 4th time, Apollo hit him hard between his shoulders. Patroclus whirls around and comes face to face with the god, who then knocks off his helmet. Achilles' helmet had never been knocked off. The warrior was too loved by the gods to ever put his head or his face at risk, but this was not Achilles. Achilles was still on his boat, waiting for the return of his dear friend who was supposed to drive the Trojans away from the boats and come right back. No, this was not Achilles. This was Patroclus. Then Apollo shattered the spear that Patroclus held. He broke the strap that held his shield to him, and he unbuckled his breastplate. And as it fell to the ground, Patroclus's legs went limp, and he stood in a daze as a Trojan drove a spear into his back. This didn't kill him, though, because Patroclus was destined to be killed by one person specifically: Hector. Hector saw Patroclus, realized it wasn't Achilles, and that he was injured and trying to retreat back to the Greek camp, so he charged and he stabbed him. And as Patroclus is dying, Hector mocks him. Patroclus looks up at Hector and tells him to boast while he can, because Achilles is coming for him. Menelaus sees Patroclus fall from the other side of the battlefield, and he fights his way over to his body, and he stands over it, fighting anyone off who's trying to come for him, because they are trying to come for him. Some of the Trojans want to take Patroclus' body so that they can try and bargain to get Sarpedon's body back, but they aren't successful until Hector charges. Menelaus stands his ground for as long as possible, but he knows that Hector is being helped by the gods. I mean, clearly, seeing how Patroclus died. Menelaus knows how important Patroclus is to Achilles, and he honestly doesn't really have a vendetta against Achilles, and he respects Patroclus for coming onto the field and giving the Greeks courage and trying to take Troy and end the war, and they can't leave him there, so he's going through the Greek troops looking for someone who can help him, and he finds Ajax the Great. He tells him what happened. They immediately go back for him, and when they get back to him, Hector is stripping off Achilles' armor and putting it on, advertising his victory over Patroclus, and he's in the process of dragging Hector's body away. He says he wants to cut off Patroclus' head and impale it on the gates of Troy and feed the body to the wild dogs, which would not only mean that he is desecrating his corpse, but he's going to prevent him from having the proper burial rites and going to the underworld. It's damning him to suffer for all of eternity. It is the biggest insult that you can do to someone. But he didn't do that because Ajax and Menelaus arrived and defend his body like, quote, a lioness defends her cubs. The fighting continues big time. The fighting over Patroclus' corpse is insane to me. On the Trojan side, they're trying to hurt Achilles as much as possible. They know that the Greeks can't win without Achilles, and if he's so overcome with grief, he won't be able to fight. The Greeks are trying to get Patroclus' body back for Achilles, but also for Patroclus. Everyone loves him. They regard him as the best among the Greeks, or the best fighter amongst the Greeks. Even Achilles' horses are crying over his death. Even Zeus pities them and the Greeks and allows Athena to go to the field to give strength to Menelaus and the Greeks. They sent a man named Antilochus, who was Nestor's son, to let Achilles know what happened to his most beloved friend Patroclus. Antilochus can't even speak. He's so beside himself with grief, and he runs back to the Greek camp, crying hysterically as Menelaus and the Ajaxes and a bunch of other men are focused completely on defending Patroclus, and they're finally able to push the Trojans back enough to start bringing his body back. And the Trojans are outraged and start trying to rush at them, but every time they do, all Ajax the Great has to do is look at them, and they are so terrified by his fury and his grief that they retreat. And that, my friends, is where we are going to stop for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a story from history or mythology that you would like to hear me discuss, please reach out. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please consider subscribing or leaving a review or joining my Patreon, where you will have lots of fun little goodies. And remember, friends, history may be watching you. So don't fuck it up, and don't shit talk people when there are gods standing by. Bye.